The truth about the Queen's Gambit is that it is a great opening. Every top player has played it. But do you know how to respond to the key variations? You could be here because of the Netflix show The Queen's Gambit, or because you play pawn to d4, or because you just want a good way to play with white. Let me show you some of the key lines you need to know from this starting position. We're going to go through many openings from d4, d5, and now white is going to play c4, the beginning of the Queen's Gambit, but it really does depend how black reacts. So first up, we're going to take it from here. As you can see from this arrow, from all these arrows there are many responses, but we're going to take it from here. Two of the main responses are c6 and e6, the Queen's Gambit, declined or the Slav. Now the first up, we are going to look at if black takes the pawn. This is called the accepted. There are a few ways for white to respond. You could go e3. You could go knight f3. Now one critical way to respond is this, pawn to e4. Now I've made a separate video covering this, featuring Magnus Carlsen, playing white and black, taking on the Queen's Gambit accepted, but also playing it from the black side. So in this video I'm going to cover one variation. There are a few ways for black to strike in the center, but I'm going to quickly look at this. Knight f6, turns out if you take c4, black is going to take e4, so we don't really want to allow that. Let's attack the knight first and then take, and then the knight tends to rotate like this, hitting the bishop. It could drop back here, something like this, and then the game goes on. This I cover in more detail in the video I will mention in the top right corner, but also at the end. Instead of that, we can play for a few more solid options, maybe knight f3 and then e3, just planning to get that pawn back. Black tends to go a6, trying to kick away this bishop. Castle, b5, bishop can tuck back, bishop comes out, castle. Black wants to get in c5 as well. Let's say here, attack the structure. That's one way to continue. Maybe queen e2, c5, the game goes on. Knight out, bishop out, queen, rook here. Maybe the knight can go to c4. That tends to be a good square for the knight in these kind of positions. So it's just one way to get your pieces out. You could go e3 first, it leads to the same thing. You actually give black this other option, e5. If take, well then the queens come off. This isn't actually any good for white. Don't fall for this in your own games. Bishop sits really well there to defend the pawn now. Don't go for this, and it looks pretty ugly anyway because white's king is in the center. Don't go for this. If this happens, then you can just get the pawn back. Take, game goes on. You've just got an isolated pawn, but it's just another way to play. So next up, instead of taking, black tends to have this popular option to defend the center. This is called the Queen's Gambit declined. Later we're going to see c6, the Slav. So let's have a look at e6. Time for white to put pressure in the center again with knight c3. If black is careless with a nothing move, then e4 is already a problem. White actually gets the center for themselves. So what tends to happen is black just plays a sensible move here, gets knight out as well. You're controlling e4. You can pin the knight, that's fine. Let's play a capture first. Black tends to capture with a pawn to maintain control of e4 with two things, the pawn and the knight. Let's pin. Let's get a bishop out and pin the knight to the queen. Black defends. Queen c2 is one way to play, just to stop the bishop coming out, but black might have this, so then the bishop comes out anyway. You can play queen c2, you can just go e3. Bishop d3. And knight f3 looks pretty good. Very sensible move. A popular way to play nowadays is knight e2. The knights defend each other, but really, when you don't put the knight on f3, white can get space with f3, e4. Castle. Queen c2, classic battery, lining up against the black king. Knight on f8 is never checkmate. Couple of knights look like great defenders. How can white continue? Well, it's all about the pawn break. Check out the blue arrows. Try and get f3, e4 in. Maybe the rook can come e1, d1. There's your pawn break. This is how you can play against the Queen's Gambit declined. One of the best ways to play with black. Next option, d4, d5. Here we go again. That's the point of this video. The truth about the Queen's Gambit is that it's a great opening. But what if black plays some funny stuff? Some weird sidelines. The Albin counter gambit. Black strikes in the center. Take. Now the point of this gambit is to go d4 to get space, controlling the dark squares. Just want to mention, if black goes wrong, black cannot castle anymore. The queens come off. And you remember, in the first example, we actually had this from the other side, where I don't think white could castle. Let's get the pieces out. Knights out, bishop out, you can even castle check. But the point is the king is still in the middle. Black might stop you moving. e3, bishop can take the pawn next. The knight might even come to g5. This is not good for black. So let's go back a few moves. In this moment, black is going to play d4. Coming up, I'm going to show you one of the most famous traps ever. However, first I'm going to show you one of the best ways to respond and an even better way to handle against this. So first up, let's challenge this center. If they go c5, we can go e3, break up the center. Knight c6, black tends to defend the center. So notice, 1, 2, black is defending it, and later black might throw in this check, which is actually part of the trap coming up. So a really good way to avoid this is to take a move out and play a3. You might be thinking a3 is such a waste of time, shouldn't I be getting my pieces out? Yes, but you are up a pawn, so why not play a3, stop the guy playing bishop b4 check, and later we can get space and pick up this pawn. Black is going to zigzag, regaining the pawn. You go b4, get space, you threaten to hit the knight, but also you get the bishop out as well. This is a nice way to play. Bishop out. Black might challenge the structure, you just kick the knight. Take, and you can take in the center with the queen. You don't want to go knight takes because now you hit the bishop. You actually go queen takes, so you defend the pawn. So the queens now come off, and it turns out white gets a pretty good endgame. Let's have a look at all the arrows. Let me explain. I think I've got it all. So we got a perfect bishop right in the center. This bishop attacks the knight. When the knight moves away, this knight can go to d2. The knights defend each other. The rook can come to c1 to defend, to attack c7. Pretty good endgame for white. Pretty difficult to play. So this is why at the highest level we don't really see the Albin counter gambit. But I'm showing it in this video, so if the guy goes for it, if the guy knows it all, you have the chance to get a good position. Now another way to play is actually this really cool option, which looks very strange. You go knight d2. I'm going to show you the trap very soon. The point of this is that white is going to zigzag. Knight d2, b3, d4, you're going to pick up the pawn. Now black might zigzag as well, but you got to get your pawn back anyway. So knight b3, with this zigzag motion, you're going to pick up d4. White has both knights and the queen on it. Black has got to get the pawn back anyway, and now we take. Pretty cool way to get another pawn. Knights come off, take, and now e3. If black attacks it, well, the knight goes here. The queens can come off, but white is up a pawn, so that's all right. Another option for white. So the truth about the Queen's Gambit. Yeah, it's a pretty good response. Or if black wants to dance, the tango. Why is it called a tango? Black gets the pieces out pretty fast. Many ways for white to respond. You can go e3. You can go knight c3. You can go knight f3. let's have a look at one option. You can invite black to dance, get all the pieces out, but you're going to play in a sensible manner, defend your center. Black continues in fashion. You just get your pieces out really fast, get a pawn break going. Now, knight c3, let's attack the queen. White needs to get their pieces out first. If you retreat the queen anywhere, then d5, the knight is now clumsy. Knight f3 coming out. Coming next, white has a good position. So, in these kind of positions, black is, well, you keep dancing. Bishop b4, pin the knight to the king. Question the bishop. You can't go here because b4, and now you lose a bishop. Or the queen. So, after a3, black has to take, and then you get this center, but all these pieces are still at home. One way to continue, you can attack the queen, attack the knight, and then couple ways to respond. Get your bishop out, knight out, castle, the game goes on. Here we go again. One of the best ways for black to respond is the Slav. Let's go knight f3, and now g3, in the fashion of the Queen's Gambit. But now we're going to a Catalan, which is a video I'm going to mention at the end as a nice segue as what you could watch next. Let's say black takes the pawn. Well, so what is a gambit? This is one reason why you guys are watching this video. Black might defend the pawn later. But so what? Bishop out. Castle. Let's attack the structure. It's fine to be down a pawn. White is ahead. In development, you've got this beautiful Catalan bishop. Black's bishop is trapped behind their own pawn. Attack the structure. Many green and blue arrows. Let me explain all of them. Got it. So, there's a chance for a capture to happen to break the structure. The knight might come to d2 to attack the structure. The knight might come in the center, therefore enhancing the bishop, opening up the diagonal. So black is under some pressure. Now if you take, you can take with the queen, but a cool journey is from the knight. Temporarily, white is down a couple of pawns, but you're going to get a pawn back. Knight b3, you're stopping black playing c5, which is the pawn break they want. Knight e1, really cool move. Really cool move, deliberately retreating the knight. Coming to d3, to c5, Catalan bishop is now open, stopping this bishop coming into play. Something like this. Let me check out all the arrows. I think I got it. So, both knights control c5, pawn controls e5, c5, e5. This bishop is open for business. The queen might even come along just to stop this pawn going forward. The bishop might come out to b2 or to f4. Even the rook. Well, that rook will probably stay there. The rook, the other one, might come to c1. So something like this. Now, going back to the fourth move, let's say black doesn't take. Maybe you want to keep it solid. Bishop out. e6. When I say solid, I mean one of the best ways to play with black or with white is the triangle setup. The reversed London system. Knight c3. You can take. Just want to show you this cool idea. There's a big difference. If the bishop is back, then this capture might be better. White now has this really cool move. Deliberately moving a second piece. Moving the knight for the second time in the opening. You're going to get the pawn back. You can't go b5 because you take and then you're going to win the rook. So, knight d7, you're going to get your pawn back. Castle, you can hit the bishop. It's fine. You can hit the bishop, yeah. Or you keep it open. Hit the bishop. a4, get a bit of space. f4 even if you're being ambitious. Bishop out. If the knight ever challenges, why not? Just come back. Just come back. And it turns out a cool way to play. Maybe we can get the bishop here. And this Catalan bishop is uncontested. There's no black bishop to counter it. Knight d7 and a couple of pawns in the center. You can take this one. It's actually good to take the bishop. And then the queen can come out as well. Let's get that off. And then something like this. Queen here. Stop the knight coming in. Couple of pawns in the center. Maybe a rook comes to the central file. Either push, probably this one, maybe, to open this Catalan bishop up. The game goes on. Here we go again. The Albin counter gambit. No. c5. Striking in the center. Take. Black takes back. Putting pressure in the center looks pretty similar to the Tango variation where black gets their pieces out really fast. But it's a bit too fast. Defend your center, don't take. Because just like in the previous line, same mistake, you cannot castle. e6, you get your pawn back. Knight f6, there's actually a cool way for black to attack the bishop in a couple of directions. You're just not defending that pawn. That's why it's not okay. I mean, the king is still in the middle. Maybe you tuck it back if you hit the bishop, but you go knight d7 now. 1, 2. You're gonna get your pawn back. b4, you're gonna chip away. Break open the structure. You can't do this because take, and then you lose your rook. So going back a few moves. Here. That's why it's actually a good idea to defend your center with the knight. Take. Looks like if the queens come off, take. I mean, this is not really why we play chess. Shouldn't be trading queens by move 6. No. There's got to be a better response, and there is. Cool move here coming up. Getting a knight out to attack the queen. You can't play pawn takes pawn because you lose your queen. So, knight c3 is a really good move. The queen moves, let's say to a5, and now knight d4. Looks like black has just wasted all their time. Couple of knights out. Queen not doing anything, and I mean, no surprise. If you have watched all the way up to this point, I like to put the bishop on this diagonal, the Catalan bishop. Maybe black attacks the knight. You drop it back. Attack the queen, it drops back. g3. Bishop g2, you're ready to castle. White has a really nice position. Now, going back to the Albin counter gambit, I've just remembered I haven't covered the trap. One of the most famous traps ever. In this position, I was suggesting knight f3. But a very logical move is e3, just to break open black's center. If you take, this is already terrible for black because the queens come off, and then take. You're just down a pawn. You are just down a pawn, and black cannot castle. So going back a few moves, well, you might be asking, well, what's the trap? Bishop b4 check. Well, okay, so what? You just block. And here is the brilliant move for black. Because if you take, this is no good. Take, same problem. The queens come off, you're going to be down a pawn. Even this, actually, probably take with the queen. Hold the pawn. This is the brilliant move for black. Take. The best move here is actually to take back. But what if white falls for it? What if white picks up the bishop? Game over already. Check. If you take, you lose your queen. So, the only move here for white is to play king e2. And now, can you pause the video or let the timer run? Can you see an absolutely brilliant move for black? And that's why this is one of the most famous traps in chess. I'll give you 5 seconds. The brilliant move is not to trade queens and then take. Is to take first. And do you get a queen? No. This is called an under promotion, where you don't get a queen, you get anything else. Knight is check. Game over. The best move here is actually just to move the king back. But if they take, game over. You just pick up the queen. One of the best traps ever. So here, I think white has to play this really funny move, just retreating the king. And then, I think you can go check. Check from the side, queen h4 check. You can't go g3 because you lose the rook. And if you just move the king, well, this is terrible. Knight out, bishop out, castle, game over. Also, please notice, black is up a piece. Black actually has an extra knight, which is really funny in this position. Black has 3 knights. What a trap. d4, d5, the first segue I want to talk about. The first transition is, you don't have to go knight c3. What if you want to mix it up? Introducing my next video, the Catalan. Maybe knight f3 first and now g3. We saw this against the Slav, but you can try this setup against the Queen's Gambit declined. Bishop g2, castle. I made this video about a year ago. How to play the Catalan from the white side. Now, you might want to mix it up. d4, d5. Maybe you want to play the London. So I've also got a London video over here. So I hope you learned a few things. Which video would you like to watch next?